I started the night shift. My boss left me with a strange set of rules. I work at a local grocery store. One of those places that sell a bit of everything. Food, electronics, clothing, that sort of thing. Most times I work in the evening and usually it's pretty uneventful. But yesterday, just before my shift ended, my manager asked if I wanted to work overnight. Something I had never done before. But since I really needed the money, I accepted. The job's simple. Take inventory, stock shelves, face products, help customers. It's pretty boring, but it pays the bills while I finish college. Yesterday, just before closing, my manager approached me and let me know that the night supervisor Andy would not be in. Family emergency or something. This guy never missed a shift, and he's the only one that works overnight. Apparently, he's been at that place forever. They must pay him well because he never left. I only met him once, but he struck me as odd, a strange demeanor about him. Maybe that's why he preferred nights, as he didn't have to interact with people. Well, last night, while I was removing the shrink wrap from a pallet, my manager came over and spoke about needing someone to work the night shift. I would smile and nod occasionally as I continued filling the shelves, but then he asked if I'd be willing to take over in Andy's absence. I thought about it, and before I could answer, he told me the pay would be at double time plus the night premium, including a bonus if everything went well. I really couldn't say no. I didn't have any classes the next day, and I had already woken up late since I slept in, so I was still feeling pretty good. More importantly, the extra money was enticing. Just a couple of hours and I'd have a few extra days' pay in my pocket. What could go wrong? I accepted the offer and thanked him, then asked what my duties would entail. "Oh, nothing crazy," he said with a smirk. "I'll leave you with the keys and a list before I head out." He began walking back to his office when he stopped to turn around. His face had grown serious. "Just be sure to follow everything that's written down exactly." He stressed the last word as he stared at me, and I gave a nod of approval. Of course I'd follow the rules. Why wouldn't I? What was on the list that I wouldn't follow? I shook it off and continued with my normal routine, emptying a few pallets as the store closed and the other employees clocked out. That was about the time when half of the lights shut down, an automated feature to conserve energy, but the ambience of the place had become undeniably eerie. No big deal, I thought to myself. Although the idea of being alone in there left me feeling a little uncomfortable. Shortly after, the manager waved me down and I walked over as he had one foot out the door. "Thanks again for doing this, Dean," he said. "Here are the keys. Be sure to lock up after you leave. The list is on my desk. And please." He stared at me with a serious expression, grabbing my wrist and pulling me close. "Follow the instructions exactly as they're written. Do not deviate. Do not falter. No matter what, under any circumstances. Don't leave without completing everything on that list." A strange feeling settled over me, and I didn't quite know how to respond. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but all that came out was, "Sure, Bill. No problem." I smiled sheepishly and pulled away as he released my arm. "Good," he said with a grin. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow." With that, he left the store, whistling as he hopped into his car and drove away. I couldn't help the peculiar feeling of the situation, a sense of unease looming over me. I quickly locked the door behind him and I immediately rushed over to his office. There on his desk was a single sheet of paper. Not a very big list, I thought. I scooped up the sheet, and beneath the paper was a strange gold coin. I had never saw anything like it. It was exquisite. I wasn't sure of the origin, but it looked very old. Maybe it was a token of his appreciation. I shrugged and drew my attention back to the list. With the sheet in hand, I began to read. There were only 5 rules, but I furrowed my brow as I soon found that each one was stranger than the last. 1. Ensure all exits are locked. Under no circumstances are you to open the door for anyone. Simple enough. There were only 2 exits in the building, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let anyone inside. But what if someone from the day shift came back? Or someone needed help? I shrugged it off and continued reading. 2. Put out all merchandise from pallets and build any displays as needed. Do not be alarmed if they move on their own. Most of the pallets had already been emptied, so after that, I was just left with building the displays. But why would they move by themselves? Maybe they have sensors and are automated, I thought. I paid it no mind and went on to the next. 3. If you hear someone call out to you, do not respond or acknowledge them. Just leave it alone. It will pass. At that point I was starting to get freaked out. How could anyone be there with me if I was alone? Maybe it was some kind of test. I had no idea what Bill meant by it, and I was getting the idea that there was much more to the night shift than I had originally thought. 4. If someone is behind you, do not turn around and speak to them. Do not look up. Avoid staring at them at all costs. I paused for a moment in disbelief, unable to take any of it seriously. What kind of game was Bill playing? Was I being recorded? Was this some type of initiation? If so, I wasn't impressed. All I knew was that I was getting tired of it already. And I certainly was not going to leave without collecting my pay. 5. Once all tasks have been completed, walk backwards out of the building while reciting the words on the coin. Do not leave without doing so. The last part was underlined in red pen. You've got to be kidding me, I said to myself. What person in their right mind would do this without thinking twice? Bill must have been outside laughing at me right at that moment. I picked up the gold coin again and it sparkled brilliantly in my hand. I ran my thumb over the engraving and tried to read the words, but I didn't know the language. It spelled out, Mali Monent, non sequenter. This is total bullshit, I said laughing aloud. I crumpled up the paper and threw it into the waste bin while instinctively pocketing the coin. There was no way I was going to do any of this. I was just going to finish my work and get the hell out of there. As I stepped out of the office, the lights in the store started to flicker. That's when I noticed something I couldn't quite explain. Jutting out from one of the far aisles was a silhouette of what looked like a person, silently observing me. They had long hair that hung down past their shoulders and a faint smile could be seen. It gave me the chills. "Hello," I yelled. "Is there anyone there?" I hadn't checked all the exits yet, maybe someone came in. Or maybe they had never left. My hands grew sweaty as I scoured the checkout aisles and pulled out a flashlight beside one of the tills, quickly flicking on the switch. The bright beam fell at the far end of the store where I had witnessed a figure standing, but there was no one there. I told myself I was just spooked by the stupid list and that it was all in my imagination, but a tendril of doubt crept up in the back of my mind. I raced to the back exit without thinking, making sure it was still locked, and sure enough, it was. Rusted bolt in place. No one could get in. Or out, it would seem. I took the opportunity to scour the entirety of the store and found no one. And just to make sure, I went back to Bill's office to check the security cameras and confirmed that the only person inside the building was me. I breathed out a sigh of relief, glad that it was just my overactive imagination. I took a moment to gather myself, then started emptying out the remainder of the pallets on the floor. While filling up the shelves and rotating products, I had a strange sense that someone was watching me. Several times I would turn around, feeling eyes on my back, but never saw the strange shadow again. If this was a normal night here at the store, I didn't want any part of it. Once that was all finished, I began to set up the displays. There were a few mannequins that needed clothing and also a giant cardboard lizard for a children's breakfast cereal that needed to be set up. The cereal was actually pretty good. Multicolored loops with little bug-shaped marshmallows. My stomach rumbled as I thought about downing a bowl or two, guzzling down the sweetened milk left at the end. One of the mannequins was already assembled and ready to be dressed. Bill must have gotten started on it before he left. strange. It looked eerily familiar. It kind of looked like Andy. The eyes seemed to hold a lifelike quality to them, despite being plastic. I shuddered, transfixed on the inanimate being, lost in that dead stare. I reached out to touch it, but before I could take a closer look, a repeated banging cut through the silence that made me jump. It was coming from the storefront window. When I made my way over, I was surprised to see someone smiling as they waved for me to come closer. They were disheveled and wearing tattered clothing, long hair covering their face, looking down with cupped hands raised up, one over the other. I stayed back, probably out of instinct. I'm guilty of watching one too many horror movies. Then they spoke up. "Food?" the man said simply. He smiled a toothless grin, holding a small dog in the crook of his arm, nestled into his jacket. That made me feel even worse. I love animals. I thought about it. I was sure that I could give him a chocolate or something. I'd let Bill know and he could take it out of my pay. No big deal. "Wait right there," I stammered, then raced over to the aisles and grabbed a couple of candy bars for him and beef jerky for the dog, then made my way back. I fished out the keys from my pocket and was ready to unlock the door when I remembered the list. That stupid list. 1. Ensure all exits are locked. Under no circumstances are you to open the door for anyone. I sighed. I felt like such an asshole for doing this. "Actually, I'm not sure if I should," I said, defeated. "The store's locked up and the alarm's enabled. I don't think it'd be a good idea." I lied about the alarm, but I didn't want to tell him I couldn't help. Then the man's smile waned and there was a sudden shift in his cheery disposition. "Please," he said sternly. "Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. Open the damn door." He banged his head repeatedly on the glass, all the while repeating those words, voice deep and guttural. I thought he was going to break the window to pieces and climb through. A shiver ran down my neck. I spun around and swiped my phone to dial 911, but when I turned back, the man was gone. In an instant. There was absolutely no trace of him. Did that just happen? I thought, convinced that I was somehow going crazy. He must have been spooked when he saw me dialing, I guess. I was really starting to get creeped out. I walked back to the displays, looking over my shoulder several times, expecting to see him at the window again, smiling at me. But he never returned. I shook it off and observed my work, eyeing the mannequin that resembled Andy. Pretty eerie, I thought to myself, and wondered if it was just a coincidence or if maybe they had it custom made. I laughed at the absurd idea and continued with my tasks. Assembling the mannequins was easy enough. Align the pins and insert them until they click and voila. There were 5 in total. All pale in color, with faces that looked realistic. Blank expressions permanently etched into them. It was unsettling watching them grouped together, so still. Almost felt like they could move at any moment. Those lifeless eyes staring into nothingness. I quickly dismissed the strange thoughts and threw on the garments provided with each mannequin, and one by one I moved them around the clothing department. I looked at my watch. It was almost 2 a.m. and I had nearly completed the displays. Just one more to go and I could finally get out of there. My stomach grumbled and I winced, quickly tearing into a chocolate bar I grabbed earlier, satisfying my appetite for the time being. I crumpled up the wrapper and aimed at the wastebasket several feet away. Bullseye. I cut off the plastic straps holding the cardboard lizard display and unfolded the various parts, grouping the different sections together until it was all neatly laid out. I actually enjoy building displays, folding and sliding the slots into place, attaching the clips and pins. It was nice seeing the separate pieces come together. Come to life. The lizard display stood about 6 feet tall, and as I stepped back to admire the large character ready to pounce into a bowl of frosted cereal, I heard my name called for the first time that night.